Hello Internet, I'm David Reddish, entertainment editor at QueerTea.com. So this is my follow-up video to my spoiler-free review of Infinity War. I really hate that term spoiler. Can we not just talk plot points? Isn't that, a little bit more accurate? I don't think it spoils the movie to necessarily know plot points in every case. I've had a lot of feedback, I've had a lot of conversations about people who don't understand why I didn't love the movie. As I said in my previous review, I didn't hate it, but it's not very good. And there are reasons for this, which is the essence of this video, discussing some of the reasons why it's not very good. One issue that comes to mind, and I have to credit Matt Stoller-Zietz, the critic at RogerEbert.com, for pointing this out. He puts it very succinctly that when you see all the Marvel characters in the same movie together, it becomes very, very obvious how formulaic the Marvel movies are. In other words, these are not characters so much as they are character types. And when they're doing their own thing in their own movie, that kind of works. But when they're all in the same frame together, they suddenly all sort of run together very wishy-washy. That is to say, characters like Iron Man, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Star-Lord, they're just the arrogant wisecracker. Black Panther and Thor, they're the prince that have to become a hero, the hero's destiny. Characters like Vision or the Hulk, super smart but afraid of their own power. Or worst of all, the chick. Like, one thing Infinity War does that really pisses me off, the women really aren't that interesting, and their only function seems to be the chick. That goes for Black Widow, that goes for Scarlet Witch, and that especially goes for a character like Gamora. Zoe Saldana does some hideous acting in this movie. I think that's not her fault. It's probably the direction, and it's probably the material that she's forced to do. But her only function in this movie is to make Star-Lord sad and give Thanos an outlet so he's a little bit more humane, and so he's suddenly, very sullen because, oh my gosh, she's dead and I killed her. Her death doesn't mean anything, though, and this speaks to a larger issue with the movie in general. Her death means nothing because Thanos can bring her back from the dead anytime he wants to. That is the power of the Infinity Gauntlet, or one of the powers of it. He doesn't need all the Infinity Gems to even do that, and he does it to Vision, and who gives, why should we care? Because he's going to bring them back in the next movie, and if he doesn't, someone else will. There's no suspense in this movie. Essentially, the characters all fight to a stalemate, and then Thanos vaporizes everybody, and I wonder why we've been sitting there for the past 2 hours and 45 minutes watching all this transpire if none of it really matters anyway, and if it can all be undone really, really easily. I think the more interesting thing to do would have been to have Thanos vaporize everybody in the first few minutes of the movie. That would have been a much bigger shock to the audience, and that would have better set up a plot where we really don't know what's going to happen, or where we feel like things are a little bit more dire, which is another problem with this movie. For the entire universe being at stake, nothing really feels dire and scary. We, as the audience watching this movie, should care about these characters, and we should feel like they're in legitimate danger, and we should be scared for what could happen. Say what you will about Zack Snyder's direction, but in movies like Batman vs. Superman, or even Justice League, and certainly in his other movies like Watchmen or 300, there's a real sense that something bad is happening, that something really screwed up is going to happen, and it's not going to be good, and we're going to be angry, and we're going to be sad. That's the nature of suspense. You don't know what's going to happen, and that's the nature of having stakes with your movie. Infinity War doesn't really have any stakes, because everything's sort of arbitrary anyway. Speaking of things that the movie doesn't have, a directorial style. The Russos have no directorial stamp. They have no personal sensibility. A director like Zack Snyder certainly has that, whether you like it or not. A director like Ryan Coogler has that, and he shows it off in Black Panther to great effect. Jon Favreau did that in the original Iron Man. Kenneth Branagh did that in the original Thor. But the Marvel movies, recently have had no real directorial flourish about them. It's all been lots of wisecracking jokes, lots of cameos, and then on to the next one, with a plot that doesn't really have any real consequences or that, I really care about. the most the Russos do is they flash the name of a location on the screen, and everything else could have been done by second unit. It could have been done by the visual effects supervisor. There's nothing about the way the film is directed that gives it any personalization. That just makes it really boring to me. It makes me feel like I'm watching an episode of an after-school cartoon, where, again, they're completely interchangeable. And, oh, this one has, Scarlet Witch is showing up in this one. Great. The one yesterday didn't have her. The one tomorrow might have Doctor Strange. Who cares? It all just runs together. And if you're going to shell out $20 or $30 for a movie ticket, I feel like it should really matter. I feel like this should be a very specific experience, and it isn't one. There's no suspense. There's no consequence. Thanos' minions aren't even characters. The weird, slimy, Silent Hill zombies that he sticks on everybody in Wakanda, which that whole sequence doesn't even matter because nothing is really resolved. Everything is completely arbitrary in this movie, and it doesn't have any balls, frankly. A much bolder thing to do would have been to scare the pants off the audience. And I'm sorry, vaporizing everybody in a really peaceful way where they can all make wisecracking jokes as they disappear, that's not moving. I want people to be scared out of their minds. Sort of like if the universe were actually in danger. I think we need to treat that subject with some degree of credibility and respect. The movie doesn't do that. The characters don't distinguish themselves. Everything just feels sort of generic. And if you like the generic Marvel flavor, maybe that's enough for you. It's not enough for me, and I wouldn't recommend this movie to anybody because it's just, unless you really, really like the Marvel movies, it's going to taste the same. It will totally taste the same for anybody. And there's just nothing great about it. I'm not looking forward to the next one. It's totally obvious what they're going to do in that all the characters who, the original Avengers actors whose contracts are up, they're the ones who survived in the last one. No doubt they'll bring some of those other characters back sort of over the course of the movie. But I'm ready to see a brooding, violent Thanos more than peaceful anti-hero Thanos. I want some danger. I want some violence. I want something scary to happen. Infinity War doesn't have any of that, which is why I tell people, stay home. If you like the other Marvel movies, watch one of those. It's going to have the same effect. This is not an epic. It's not a great film. It's not god-awful. But to say something is passable is not what I would consider a compliment or a recommendation. I'm also interested that a lot of the Marvel fans that I've spoken to recently always say, oh, well, it could have been so much worse. Well, okay, that's not a reason for liking a movie, though. That something isn't as bad as it could have been. Things can always be worse, folks. It's not that great, and somehow lowering the bar, lowering expectations before you go in to see it, that's not any way to measure the success of the film. It doesn't succeed on its own terms. I don't think it really distinguishes itself amongst the Marvel movies. I don't think it distinguishes itself amongst comic book movies, amongst the genre. It's just kind of forgettable. So as far as other superhero movies this year go, Deadpool 2, I'm sure, will distinguish itself a little bit more from this one. And I'm bummed that Dark Phoenix is now pushed to next year because that's the kind of movie that I would like to see. Something epic with people dying and with characters that I actually care about and have an investment in and who have distinguishing characteristics. Infinity War doesn't have any of that. It's just, in a weird way, the title is sort of emblematic of the entire Marvel universe because it just goes on forever without anything really changing, and I'm sorry, I just don't care.